So let's jump into IAQ and filtration. So when we talk about indoor air quality, there's a lot of different ways to view it. One of the more common ways right now that people are really focusing on is what's called PM 2.5, right? So this is particulate matter at 2.5 microns. Very clever name, right? Compared to PM 10, which you guessed it is 10 microns. The human hair, by the way, is on average 80 microns. Just to put that frame of reference for you, you can see that this is a very, very small particle. Why is this a particle that people are really focusing on? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, think about, when you breathe deeply, these really ultrafine particles can get into the deepest components of your lungs and even into your blood vessels. Also, this is around the size that some of the micropollutants in smoke, whether it's wood smoke or combustion byproduct because it's near a freeway or a construction zone, a lot of the microparticulates involved in that are in this range. It's also an easy thing to get into an unhealthy thing if you have a high concentration of this compared to some other pollutants. So PM 2.5 is something that has become our benchmark when we talk about particle size that we want to track. When we talk about how we want to filter this, there's a filter rating system called MERV. If you ask me what MERV stands for, I'll probably have to tell you that I can't recall. But guess what? Neither can almost anybody else. What you need to know with MERV is two things. The higher the MERV rating, the better it is at filtering small particles. So if you look here, a MERV 11 filter, which is kind of commonly considered to be a pretty decent filter, can actually filter out a decent amount of a lot of different irritants and allergens, including things like smoke, smog, and sneeze droplets. So that's pretty darn good. MERV 13 can do even more. The second thing, however, you need to understand with these is that the higher the MERV rating, the more resistance to airflow it creates. So if you have a MERV 11, 12, or 13, or 16 filter, you definitely want to have it to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches deep instead of a 1-inch deep filter. What that allows is more surface area, and so each individual square of surface area of the filter is doing its job and overall doesn't have as strong of an impact in terms of reduction of airflow or increase of pressure in the ductwork attributed to it. So higher the MERV, the better it is at filtering, but also the more likely it should be a deep pleated filter in order to not cause unintended consequences to our heating and cooling and ventilation systems.
One other interesting tidbit here, it turns out, people who are going to use an exhaust-only strategy may get a question from a homeowner of, yeah, but now I don't have anything to filter my new air coming in. Well, that is sort of true. It's actually not technically true because the house itself, particularly a fairly tight house, packed full of insulation, works like a MERV filter itself. Depending on the reports that you read, that could be anywhere from a MERV 8 to MERV 11 typically type of filtration level that you can get. Now, this is predicated upon you've done a decent job of air sealing and you've packed all the insulation in all the right places. But just want to make that clear, you're not out of the running for protecting the homeowners if you use exhaust only. You just don't have quite the same degree of control with filters that can be changed out regularly like you would with a supply side or a balanced ventilation strategy.
So the thing that we're really, hearing a lot of focus on, and rightfully so after our last several summers, has been addressing wood smoke. From whether it's from wildfires or just our neighbors trying to conserve energy. So there's really a 3-step filtration process and concept for smoke. In the example that's shown here, we're talking about a HEPA filter, but you could replace that with, say, a MERV 13 to 16 filter is also going to do some decent capture at that PM 2.5 range. So typically what you have here is 3 different filter types. The second and third may be integrated into one, or they could be three separate. A pre-filter gets rid of the big sticks and bugs and big pieces of dust. And then that either HEPA or MERV, high MERV filter, starts really getting at a lot of the particulates and even down to the germ level, depending on how efficient it is. And then the carbon filter, or charcoal as it's sometimes referred to, can remove some odors and chemical vapors. So that can be a component of wood smoke as well. I will say this, while these systems can work very well, I'm always encourage people to be very cautious about making claims related to health because you put in a really nice filter for a number of reasons. Quality of installation matters just as much as the quality of the filter. If air can go around the filter, it's not doing its job. The quality of the filter matters in terms of, does it do the job but restrict the airflow? What if it does its job, but the particulate filter works great for up to 6 months, but the charcoal filter stops being able to absorb VOCs after 6 weeks? Is that really a good filter after those 6 weeks? It's not doing all three things. So be very aware that there is filtration on the marketplace. And again, by buying them as separate versus all in one, you can maybe have different levels of control. But this gets to be a rather complicated story, and it's something that you can talk about reducing the risk of poor indoor air quality and reducing the risk of exposure, but be very careful about making health claims simply because you picked a high quality rated filter or a three-step filtration system. So here we just have some diagrams of a three-step filtration system in process. So if you look at the one with the green box here, right? The challenge with this is, if you can tell, this is common with HEPA filters. They have so much resistance to airflow that they actually need a bypass out of the mainstream of airflow. So what good is something that's 98% efficient if only 50% of the air goes through it? Compare that to the one with the blue box on it. The one with the blue box or the one with the yellow box. Well, the yellow box, at least it has, all of the air coming from outside is getting filtered and 50% of the air from inside in this external box. But the blue box at least can do all of its job directly on the system. The blue box, you probably aren't going to the HEPA level. You're probably going to a MERV 13 to 16. Again, I don't want you to have to focus on this. I just want you to see that there are a great many options. As you begin to go down this road, you're probably going to want to bring in, make sure your HVAC trade has either an industrial hygienist or someone well-trained in indoor air quality and indoor environmental management. Or you might want to bring in a home energy rater who is certified in Indoor Air Plus or one of the other numerous healthy home type certifications. I mentioned this earlier. There is the real possibility of pretty strong static pressure change because you've got a really strong filter in place. When you have an ECM motor and you put a resistance to airflow in its path, they actually are designed to just ramp up the motor more to continue to move the air. So ECMs are excellent at delivering the air despite the configuration and the static pressures they're exposed to. But they do it at the expense of energy usage. So you just want to be really careful with your design strategy. So try to get a pressure drop of less than 20% by the filters that you put in. And most of this, just like with HVAC, where you can get performance tables, there are actually performance tables for filters as well. So take a look, be careful, make sure that you're getting the ones that won't exacerbate that. Also, again, back to that maintenance and homeowner education, even something that has less than a 20% external static pressure drop, that's when it's rated during its average lifespan. If you continue to keep the filter in beyond its standard lifespan, it will just get dirtier and dirtier and will start to increase that static pressure, making that fan use more energy, increasing duct leakage, having all kinds of negative impacts. So you do want to have that education for the homeowner that they do need to change the filters on the appropriate schedule, particularly when they're putting in really efficient filtration. To be more specific, with filter maintenance, check often, right? Replacement is often needed on a quarterly basis, particularly as we enter into a place where we're running systems continuously to meet ventilation requirements. Every 3 months may be a very legitimate thing. Be conscious of the cost. So don't put in a system that costs a fortune for your homeowner to have to replace. This is why I'm a proponent of the MERV 11 to MERV 13 for most scenarios, because it's cost competitive. You can do a 1 to 2 inch filter, probably 2-inch filter, won't cost a fortune, fairly widely available, fairly easy to change out. But part of that means you have to have a good location access, make sure it's easy for the homeowner to get to that filter, and then make sure you do use pre-filters. Get the big stuff out of the way so that your slightly more expensive filter, the one that is really responsible for reducing the risk of poor indoor air quality, make sure that that can do its job for a longer time because you used a pre-filter.